and I eventually got my first deal at 17. It was around $20,000.
Wow.
If we both have the same skill sets, we bring nothing to the table. And I started doing this weird thing called cold calling, and so I started implementing that into his business, and it grew like crazy.
Welcome to Deal Nation, where we tap into Launch Control's nationwide network to find out what's bringing in deals and how we can all work together to build generational wealth. We're joined today by Zach Ginn, a real estate pro, a real estate coach, a guy who gives away a ton of free and very valuable content online. So Zach, happy to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if anybody that's done a quick Google search of your name is going to find a boatload of content and great advice, but without having to go down that rabbit hole, give us a little insight into how you got involved in real estate investment and what you're up to now.
Yeah, so my name's Zach Ginn. I'm a real estate wholesaler. As of today, I've done personally over 2,500 deals in the past 8 years, and I just love wholesaling. That's mostly what I do. I do creative finance, flipping, pretty much everything. But yeah, I got started in wholesaling real estate because my dad was doing it, and I wanted to start making a bunch of money. He taught me how to wholesale real estate for free, and eventually I started wholesaling by myself, then started working with him, and now we have one of the largest wholesaling operations in the country, which is pretty cool. But really, the only reason that a lot of people know me is because I teach wholesaling for free. My dad taught me for free, and I thought, well, that was unfair, so let me just teach everyone for free. And that's kind of started, Flip with Rick, freewholesaling.com, all these things, and to the point now where I can get JV deals everywhere. Pretty excited.
I don't think I've ever heard of wholesaling as the family business before. I feel like that's the first one for me. That's cool.
Oh yeah.
So how old were you when you kind of first realized that what industry your dad was in and kind of that what he was doing in real estate was kind of unique?
Yeah, so I was 16 years old when I found out I wanted to get into wholesaling, and I was 16, 17 transition period, senior year of high school, and I eventually got my first deal at 17. It was around $20,000,
Wow.
and it changed my life. And then when I graduated high school, by my graduation, I had about $100K in the bank from just assignment fees, and that kind of started the addiction.
As it would. Yeah, that's amazing. 100K by the time you graduate high school. I think I had like $11 in the bank when I graduated high school. So when what were some of the early lessons that you learned from working with your dad and what he was able to teach you for free, where you were like, this is information that people should have that is probably not obvious, right? It's probably not something that they're going to get to on their own.
Yeah, so the best lesson I ever learned working with him was if we both have the same skill sets, we bring nothing to the table. 1 × 1 = 1, and if I get half the profits as a partner, that makes 0 sense. So one of the most transitional points of my life was when I went to college and I learned I couldn't wholesale locally because my market sucked, and I had to learn cold calling, which Rick never did. And I got really good at cold calling. And I say this a lot, but I cold call 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for a year straight in my dorm room. And I got really good cold calling. And then I started learning other marketing strategies. And then when I came to work with Rick, we had different skill sets. I started doing this weird thing called virtual wholesaling, which was a new, ambitious, weird thing, in 2018, 2019, that Rick thought was bogus and fake and not real. And I started doing this weird thing called cold calling with the old Mojo dialer back in the day, and it worked really, really well. And so I started implementing that into his business, and it grew like crazy. And eventually a point came where there was this brand new marketing strategy called SMS text blasting. And I believe this is a little even before Launch Control's time, could be during the time, but there were services, Launch Control had this, I definitely used it, where for $400 you could send unlimited text messages. It was the greatest thing ever. I think I was like 20 years old, and I gave Launch Control $400, and I was able to send 60, 70, 80, 90,000 texts for free, and I could send whatever I wanted. I literally write the script I wanted, and it would get sent out. I could say the most insane things now that would get blocked back in the good old days. And Rick was like, what is texting? I'm like, if we're getting 4 deals a month from direct mail, let's just text this list. And it grew a business like crazy. And that's kind of how I learned about Launch Control. Now things are a little different. I'm not saying launch control has that anymore, but back in the day, it was so powerful because no one really was talking about it, and I got that first mover advantage. So I always like talking about the story.
Yeah, no, there was definitely a time when it was a little bit more wild west with the way people used the platforms and also kind of what was able to get through. But it was all based on a pretty simple principle, which is that everybody's got a phone, and the one app, like, even in those days, apps weren't even that heavily integrated yet. But like the one app that every phone has that everyone uses is the text messaging app, right? And so you send a text message to someone, they're gonna read it. They may not respond. It may not be something that's wanted. But to this day, I still do the same thing. Like, even when I get, my telephone provider sends me a text message offering whatever promo that they want to offer, I still see it, still read it. I don't respond to it, but I see it. And so that the fact that text continues to this day to be the marketing channel, or the communication channel, better yet, communication channel that is always seen, remains true. You can't say that for email, you can't say that for direct mail, you can't say that for anything else. Text is always seen. But what I think and I'd love to get your opinion on this, because I think what's happening a lot now is that people are seeing more and more of a through line in the different ways that market to people. So how can you use text and cold calling as a 1-2 combination, as opposed to separate entities? Or how can you use direct mail and text together instead of separate channels that are with separate metrics, but rather, instead, how are you using those together to optimize a single list?
The way that I always do things is it's all about just reaching them at the right time, at the right place. And so if you go and have a billboard about a restaurant, you'll find people there, and then you can make a Facebook ad, and you're going to find doing each channel, you're going to reach people that never even saw it. And so, I know this is launch control, but I can say what I want. Cold calling still is my favorite because it's the fastest way to get results, which is practically free. And what I mean by this is, if I can get a cold calling business that's getting me 1 to 2 deals every single month, I can almost guarantee you, if you just text that list, you get an extra deal a month. Guaranteed. If I have guaranteed cold calling results, if I just add launch control, it's just putting fire on it, because it's already proving you're getting deals every month doing that. I'm not a big fan of just texting a list that has not been proven. What I believe texting should be is you add it onto a business that's already working, and it just blows up like crazy. It's probably the best way to do it. Everybody reads texts, and I know launch control had a time, I think last year, where the opt-out language got weird, and then everyone thought texting was dead. I never thought it was dead. I'll tell you, launch control was the only company that kept pushing it. We're like, hey, we're gonna make a change, and now we don't have the opt-out language. I mean, hopefully it stays like this, but everyone thinks texting is dead, and they just throw it off. If you're watching this in 2024, you probably have gotten 16,000 texts from political action committees and your politicians, and both presidential candidates text me every week. And I unsubscribe, but I keep getting texts. So you're telling me that texting is going to become illegal when your politician, that's how they're getting their funding. They're never going to get rid of that channel. Same with cold calling. Your congressman, not a lot of people know this, but if you're in the DNC or RNC, you spend 1 day a week at your political office headquarters in Washington, D.C., cold calling donors. If you make any of those illegal, they don't make money. So if the politicians can make money off of it, they're never going to make it illegal.
Yeah, and it's not a question. What it comes down to really is the telecom industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's something like 27 billion text messages that are sent globally every single day. So regulating that giant ocean of communication, the regulation is actually done by the giant companies that run that. Right?
Yeah.
And it gets lumped together, and we call it the carriers. But the truth is that they are businesses that have consumers, the recipients that you're texting, and then they have B2B arrangements, which is the politicians, the wholesalers, the e-com companies, any business that is using text as a way to engage with their consumer base, they're in a B2B relationship with those giant telecom providers. And those giant telecom providers will make small changes that they think are beneficial for the recipients. And the butterfly effect that has on the B2B relationships that are within their ecosystem can be very impactful. They're not doing it to be malicious. They're trying to create a better experience for the recipients. But when you, as a wholesaler, which in their ecosystem is almost invisible, the knock-on effects of them making small little changes, and then the platforms like Launch Control having to adjust to those kind of changes, you'll feel it momentarily. But it's there. This idea of texting being dead is nonsense. That's not at all the case. It's just a question of when not necessarily legal regulations change, but business to business enforcement from carriers has an impact on people. You do of course have to adjust to that, but it is a temporary adjustment, and the baseline foundation of text being a powerful communication tool goes nowhere.
I agree. It's just the TCPA law gets a little weird, but we got today. We got like 3 or 4 case laws. Just did a video about how somebody actually sued a wholesaler for texting a seller, but because TCPA law does protect wholesalers, because you're not selling a service, you're offering to buy their home, you're protected. Right. And so I get there's so much like, oh, don't text the DNC list. I'm like, I don't say do it, but like, I mean, it's you gotta do it the right way. But no, texting is not becoming illegal. So is carriers, but it's more alive than ever. Like, I mean, older people are, they're going away in the future, and younger people are coming in, and pretty much if you're over the age of 40, you'll answer every single text being sent to you.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I'm curious what you think, because you have a what is it, 2,800 deals that you've closed, and
2,500. Hopefully 2,800 end of the year. If I get lucky.
By the time this airs, 2,800, right? So, and you've had you constantly having conversations with sellers, and you're able to run a business somewhat at volume, right? Or very much at volume. So, when you look at that conversation that text is involved in is really a conversation about where wholesaling sits from a seller perspective, right? Because the distressed market is as big as it's ever been, and it's not going anywhere, the distressed homeowners market. So a lot of these questions are like, what is the experience like for the seller, and what is the profile of wholesaling from a seller perspective, right? Is it trusted? Is it respected? And if it is, then it kind of changes the narrative. So do you think that the way that wholesalers engage with homeowners is going to change a little bit? And because some of the regulations aren't about texting at all.
Yeah, so I'm the only person that doesn't sound like that. The reason is because I know the laws. Pretty much every single law, there's always loopholes, and the assignment of contract has not been illegal for anyone without a license except for the state of Illinois. There's ways around every single law. The reason why I hear people say, get licensed, do this and that, it gets the biggest monkey in your back. Like I was going before the TCPA. If I text with Launch Control as a real estate agent, but I'm looking to buy your house, if I text you, are you interested in selling your home? I can get sued because I am also a real estate broker, so theoretically, I could sell you a service. Boom, TCPA violation. That becomes a bad issue. On top of that too, if the the real estate board decides that texting is not an appropriate means of communication for marketing, you can't do it. The real estate board will stop you, even though it's legal. So I'm not a big fan of being a license because it stops so much marketing. Even when I was starting out, I was 18, right? I got my first deal off a bandit sign. If I was a real estate agent, I couldn't put a bandit sign out without putting my name on it. Being a real estate agent has more cons than pros. And even today, the real estate board will take away wholesalers' assignment fees if the board deems it legal, but they didn't like the actions due to the ethics board. And so I hate having a license for wholesaling. It hurts you more, and more or less, the only people telling you to get a license are licensed real estate agent wholesalers. It's like talking to a vegan. Hopefully, I don't know if you're a vegan, but like if you talk to a vegan, the only thing they tell you is be a vegan, right? That's how it works. So I don't like that narrative in wholesaling at all.
Okay. With that in mind, though, of like, you know, how you communicate with sellers, what is your approach for communicating with sellers in terms of, you know, letting them know what solutions you can offer and guiding them down that path? Like, what's your seller approach?
Oh yeah, this is a little different from the beginner audience watching this, because if I am using launch control to text a seller, first and foremost, I need to get on the phone with them as soon as possible. And the second part, you know, launch control is headquartered in Tampa. If I'm wholesaling in Tampa, the first thing I do is I let them know that I'm better than the other people texting you. That's the main issue, because in Tampa, one person wants to sell their house, there's 8 wholesalers texting him and calling him, which is a really bad issue. So the first thing I do is I let them know that, hey, our boss, Zach Ginn of the company, he's bought in at least 4 or 5 houses in the area last month. Your other guy you're talking to has not. So I instantly try to gain that credibility to get rid of the other 5 or 6 wholesalers, because I know it's unfair to say, but that has always given me the best advantage. Because if I deal with another wholesaler who is brand new, they're going to offer way more and I just can't make any good spreads on it. So the first thing I do when I talk to a seller, I give them trust. I let them know I'm legitimate, and I give my company name, and they can see the list of all the houses I bought, so it's as legit as possible. Now, I've been doing that since I was 18, because when I was 18, it's like, is this 18-year-old kid going to buy my house? I always went, hey, I work with my partner who could be my cash buyer, and that gives me credibility. Same way I say that me and Michael Jordan both won 5 championships, you know, combined. Like, I gain credibility using him. With myself, it's nothing.
And you have the experience now. You're right. One of the things that goes overlooked a little bit is people look at the list that they have, and they look at the touch points that they have with that particular seller, and often forget that seller has received text messages from other investors, has received direct mail from other investors. It probably is going online and seeing PPC ads that are targeting them related to their home, and so they're hyper aware of the fact that people are looking at them and looking for a deal. And so you do need to stand out from the crowd, and you know, having an angle to stand out from the crowd can really be beneficial to help you do what you said and get people on the phone as quickly as possible, which you ask anybody at Launch Control, will all tell you that, right? Like, we want you to use text to start conversations. And we want those conversations to lead to discovery calls as quickly as possible, because when you get to a discovery call and you can actually talk to a homeowner about solutions and establish trust and really get them to understand like what working with you is going to be like, that's when you're going to get deals, right? We want them into your ecosystem as quickly as possible. So text is intended to take data points, turn those data points into open conversations, and turn those open conversations into real estate related conversations.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, now that, you know, how do you split your time between, you know, getting from 2,500 to 2,800 deals, and then also providing so much content, because you're very prolific with the content you provide and the free guidance and coaching that you have out there on your channels. How are you splitting your time?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. It's just leverage. That's the simple thing. So if I look at the real estate business, it's 3 separate businesses, right? It's the local business, the virtual wholesaling, and then the JV deals. And so one thing that feeds the JV deals is obviously just me being on video, just letting people know how to wholesale. Then they learn how to get a deal under contract, and then they send us a JV deal, right? So that's one reason why I like putting out content, but mostly just helping people out for free. I think karma always comes back to me. But the videos isn't a lot of work. So I don't edit the videos, I don't do the thumbnails, I don't do any of that stuff. I have a whole team that deals with that. And so if I do from all the channels, if I post 7 videos, again, I only do half because Rick's on there. It's like 3 or 4 hours a week of work. I mean, more people spend time on TikTok than doing that, right? So I just sit behind, just say something, right? It's 5 hours a week isn't bad. I spend more time working out than that.
Yeah, that's great. Can we dive into the JV deals thing for a second? Because I think that could be super helpful. Can you give us an example of a recent JV deal and how it came about?
Yeah, so I'll tell you my first JV deal and the one I'm most excited for right now. So my first JV deal was, I believe in the concept of karma, which it was a big leap just to go out here and get my best secrets on YouTube for free. But it just felt like I was 19, like no one's gonna believe me. So let me just give my best advice out and just show, hey, there's 50,000 I just made, 19 years old. So that helped me a lot. But what I did was I just started sharing how to wholesale for free. And eventually a lot of these new people believed in me and they started doing my stuff and started doing deals. And I'm in this weird market called Port St. Lucie. So it's about 3 hours from Tampa, East Coast, north of Palm Beach. And there's about 200,000 homes here. It's a good market. And there's not many people I know there, but they said, oh, Zach's in that market. Let me virtually wholesale there. And a lot of virtual wholesalers are good at locking up deals, but they can't sell the deal because they have no buyers and they can't do walkthroughs and a lot of issues. So I got a comment from a subscriber saying, hey, I just locked up a deal in Port St. Lucie. I can't sell this. I live in Arizona. I'm like, okay, well, why don't we just split it? And I have some of my good buyers and I just walk through and get the deal. They're like, yeah, that works. We signed a JV deal and I just walked one of my buyers through. It took me like an hour and I made about $35,000, $40,000 from that deal. So I split it. So I got 20 grand, he got 20 grand. I'm like, I just made $20,000 from an hour work. This is pretty cool. I don't have to sell a coaching program. I just make 20 grand after an hour. And eventually that grew. And then I got really good at virtual wholesaling and started doing it around the country. So that's kind of the point here. I make the most money from my social media from JV deals. We have Flipbook Plus. The point of Flipbook Plus, the coaching program is if you send me a JV deal, you get inside the mentorship for free. And so the point is always to push the JVs. And that has been the biggest revenue source for us right now from the content that I make. That's why I push it. I think by next year, I'll probably make more money off of JVs than my actual wholesaling business, which sounds dirty, but it's growing so crazy right now. Now, my most excited one, I got someone inside of Flipbook Plus. We're going to split a $100,000 deal. So we made first 6-figure JV deal. So I make 50 grand, they make 50 grand. It's going to be pretty cool. And so that's just the power of helping people out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge win, but it's also it's great for risk reduction. If you're lined up a remote deal, you don't, like you said, you don't have the buyers on that side, and that the fear factor that goes into, well, what if I get stuck holding the bag? You're not going to have that. You can take that away because you're working with someone who's experienced and has contacts in that market. Have you had the inverse work out for you, where you're going into a remote market somewhere that you don't necessarily have the buyers lined up and you've worked with someone else? Or are you just I know you have strategies in place for finding buyers in any market. So are you kind of leaning on your own best practices or occasionally JVing people in other markets?
No, I'll flip it too. So when my team gets a new virtual market, I do that, where I'll go to Greenville, South Carolina, and I just lock up deals because it's easy. And then I'll just go out here and, hey, who's got buyers in Greenville? JV with them until I build up my buyers list and then stop JVing, and then operations are all good. It's the quickest way possible.
Yeah, no, I think it's good advice for people, and I think it is often overlooked, like the ability to work with somebody on something, lean on them for, like opening up. You said that some of the best advice you got from your dad was, and I forget exactly how you phrased it, but it's basically you can't both be great at the same thing. Right? You have to offer different skill sets. And I think it falls into that same sort of category, right? Like you can be really great at finding deals in a remote market, but if you're not great at the dispo side, if you don't have a really good buyers network lined up, then there's huge value and learning opportunity in working with somebody who does.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%.
So how do you once you have a buyer's network in place, what's your process for keeping them happy and feeding them and communicating with them?
Yeah, first of all, feeding them is the best relationships. We make sure we call our buyers at least once a month to see how they're going, if it's changing, how the flips we sold them do. And usually they're like, oh, we made money off that, that's great, give me more deals, and we're all good. And then we find more buyers, obviously. I think once a month's the best for us, and it's always a call. It's never a text or something not personal. Simple call, they're happy.
Are you working, I know that, you want to stay away from being licensed, but are you working with licensed agents and having them feed you properties, anything that's on, like the expired listings or anything like that? Are you getting deals that way as well?
Yeah, I stay away from all on market. What I do like doing though is I like going after buyer's agents, especially now because of the whole licensing and the commission issue, where they're going to be struggling a little more. Where I will pay a real estate agent 14%, 15%. I could care less if they bring a buyer, and I charge them a stupid amount, and they'll take it all day. And so I like finding investor buyer agents, and so I usually just go to Realtor.com, whatever, even the MLS if you can. Go to the recently solds, and in my market, the average ARV is like 400 grand. So I go to, max sold price 150 grand for single family, the ugliest houses possible, look for the buyer's agents, and I just start messaging them and paying them good on my deals. So if an agent usually makes 4 grand off of a sale to be a buyer's agent, I'll give them 10. Nothing illegal about it.
No, not at all. It's just networking, right? Like knowing people at different stages of the process. So when people come in, that's kind of advanced usage, right? When you get to that stage where you're doing JVing and JVing with other people in multiple markets, you're going and researching the right realtors to contact and cutting them in on deals. That's where people want to get to. But when they first come in and they first start watching your videos, what are the top 3 things that you advise people to do to get started, or that are the first order of things for them to get started?
Yeah, it's a little different now. I think anyone can JV right now. So for example, my Facebook group's got 140,000 people in it. I tell anyone, like, hey, you think you find one person out of 140,000 that needs help selling a deal? Like, you get your first deal JVing. 1 out of 140,000, it's a drop in the bucket, easy. But the 3 things I tell anyone starting out, first and foremost, just learn how to wholesale, which, I teach people that. Number 2, 1,000 hours. That is my rule. Just put 1,000 hours in. I have a little chart I always do. It's like the amount of money you make and the amount of time you put in this business. Once you're at 1,000 hours, it's almost guaranteed you're going to get a wholesaling deal. So go do it. And after 1,000 hours, and then number 3 is create a schedule and stick to it. And as long as you stay consistent, you're good to go. Most young people can't stay consistent, but the ones that can always will make money in this business.
Yeah, we always tell people at Launch Control, like, sign up when you're ready to commit for 90 days minimum. If you can commit to 90 days, you'll get the pipeline full, you'll have enough time for the initial deal or deals that you find to be well in process, and you'll see very clearly, if not have it already profited enough to see the value in what you're doing. But give it that time, and within that time, you don't have to put in 1,000 hours, but you have to put in the time to actually make it work, right? Like, you can't just plug it in and have deals come. You actually have to send the batches, work the leads that are coming in on the inbound responses, pivot to phone calls as quickly as you can, and actually put in the work. And I think you've said a couple of things already in this conversation that showed where you put in your 1,000 hours plus, right? Like, sitting in your dorm room, calling for 5 hours a day, cold calling, and putting in that effort. Like, that is not a fun activity, especially when you're first learning how to do it. And
that's why I wanted to start texting.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're going to take a certain level of rejection in order to get the success that you want. So, but I think it's good advice, because there are some of the gurus out there that will really highlight the ease of making money in real estate, and it can be, right, like you said, like you message somebody in a group of 140,000, you're going to find somebody that will JV a deal. Maybe there's $10,000 to $40,000 involved in that one connection, technically easy, right? But it's probably backed by you spent X number of hours texting, you spent X number of hours following up by phone call, you spent X number of hours watching YouTube videos and training or working with you directly. And so that point of ease was really actually backed up by a fair commitment to learning and trial and error,
So if you spend 1,000 hours and then you get into launch control, it's almost guaranteed your success. One of my biggest pet peeves is when a newbie just signs up for launch control and they send, they'll spend $1,500, they'll do all this and they say launch control sucks. And they don't know how to talk to sellers. They don't know the right lists. They have the worst skip tracing. And then they want to blame launch control that everything sucks. So the reason I tell everyone to do 1,000 hours, because at 1,000 hours, you know how to talk to the seller. You know what lists work or don't. And launch control is just a tool, right? And so, if you give a guy a shovel and he does it well, he'll dig a good hole. If you give a guy a shovel and he doesn't want to work hard, it doesn't matter how good the tool is. If you're not willing to work it the right way, the reason 1,000 hours is just, if you have all the skill sets, once you get a powerful tool like launch control, it's all over. I don't like newbies getting in using a tool that they don't know how to use, because then they start blaming the tool, and that's just excuses.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a microcosm of problems that happen for people getting involved in real estate investment.
Oh yeah.
In general, because if you think about it, like if somebody comes in and what they're really looking to do is make an extra 60 grand a year, and with that 60 grand, they want to fund whatever they want to fund. Right, so they could do probably 3, maybe 4 wholesaling deals throughout the course of the year and make that no problem, right?
Yeah.
So they could just do driving for dollars for that, right? You don't even technically need launch control. Like you could probably go out and just old school hustle that, do some driving for dollars, call people up, knock on some doors, and you'll probably get your 3 deals a year without putting in too much effort. And if that's your end point, if that's all you want is 50, 60 grand a year, 2-3 deals a year, you could cap it at that and do, minor, if any, marketing and probably still make money. But if you want to if you want to make it a business and you want to scale up and you want to make, real money at it, then you're going to need to have a business plan, right?
Yep.
And in that business plan, you're going to need to have a plan for marketing. You're going to need to have sales training and an understanding of how the sales funnels work. You need to understand what taxes you're going to have to pay and when. You're going to have, there's a lot that you need to understand that goes into actually doing this, not as a little side hustle hobby that makes you a bit of extra cash, but something that it is a replacement for your W-2 and a path to a lot more. It's a business plan, right?
I agree.
So within that 1,000 hours, like where are you focusing on helping people really with the marketing and sales conversations, or is it more of like a full scale how to start, run, and scale an REI business?
I just generally tell everyone just do a 3-1-1 approach. So for every 5 hours of wholesaling, spend 3 hours in marketing, 1 hour on your acquisitions, follow up, talking to sellers, and 1 hour finding buyers and getting your dispositions process all right. So you eventually do that 200 times, 200 times 5, 1,000.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty simple breakdown. So, what are like you have a ton of content out there. Do you have sort of a priority viewing that you suggest that people follow, or is it just best to kind of follow, listen in? They'll get similar advice if they just become regular listeners?
No, I got a wholesaling course. It's got like 250,000 active people in it. And so that's the best case study I found. And so, freewholesaling.com if you want to go try it out. But I think most wholesalers have been through it, hopefully. If you don't know about it, check it out. But go through the course. It's a barn burner. It's a lot. I think it's like 50, 60 hours, but it's worth it. For example, the first 2 videos in that course are 2 8-hour events that I did, where I did an event for 8 hours. I said everything you need to know about how to get your first deal, and then day 2, right? So 16 hours. That's the first 2 videos. infreewholesaling.com. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's free. So that's where I direct everyone to that. I'm like, stop watching YouTube, just go through that. You don't have to subscribe to me anymore. Just learn how to do it, and eventually you'll send me a deal or something.
No, I love your commitment to free education and the free tools. It's one of the things that I like about the wholesaling industry a lot. I say this often on the show, is that the wholesaling industry, despite the level of competition, is very, very supportive. So your ability to find people that will JV a deal with you, the ability for people to kind of walk you through the processes or tell you, how they're using launch control, to tell you how they handle cold calls, just be very supportive in teaching. Investor to investor is quite common.
All right.
Like, as you and I talked about before, a lot of times in the guru coaching space, there's a paywall. And you've been, very adamant about dropping that paywall and just being kind of open source about how you run a business and the way that people can model things after you.
That's it. That's how it works so well. I mean, you spend $12,000 to learn a course, and if the information's bad, and you're out $12,000. I think it's ridiculous. Because I say, what if you put $12,000 into texting? Guarantee you get a deal doing that, right? So I always look at the opportunity cost. Learn from me for free, then put $12,000 into texting. You would do a lot better than spend $12,000 and having to wholesale with no money.
Yeah, and setting up those activities like working with launch control. I agree with you that cold calling can be a very powerful tool as well if you can afford it, to do a little bit of like PPC, whatever it is that you can put in to get the leads coming in. As long as you've done like the 1,000 hours or at least 500 hours, like you said, you know how to talk to sellers, so that you're not wasting those opportunities, but actually able to turn those into deals, then the money will come. A lot of people have made a lot of money in this business by just getting the leads in and being able to turn them over. And then there are ways that you can, like we said, there are ways that you can bring those two things together. So cold calling, for instance, if you run through a cold calling list, you call everybody, you can text them at the end of the day with launch control and say, hey, I tried to call you earlier today. Here's what I wanted to discuss. I'm an experienced investor in the market, however you want to phrase it. But you can use the two together to help build trust. And by doing that, you're opening up multiple channels, right? Because that people read text messages. So if you've had a conversation with them and you have one more question, one little thing that you didn't clarify with discovery, or they have one more question, and neither of you really wants to get back onto a phone call, text is a great communication tool to do that. So if you've been able to open up that channel, it just gives you more opportunity to loop back with them in a simple but effective way. It doesn't all have to be outbound. It doesn't all have to be conversation starter. It can be a conversation it's a tool to continue conversations as well.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So for anybody that is, I know that a lot of the people that you worked with early on have now kind of grown into pretty big businesses. They're bringing on teams. Are you working with any of those teams to help get everybody up to speed, or are you still working with some of those people that were your early stage people that you were coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I still work with them. I mostly just do deals with them, or if they're in Flipboard Plus because they sent me a JV deal. I mean, we go to they come to live events and stuff like that. But I just know them. I let them run their own businesses.
What kind of live event you're still running live events?
Yeah, so if you do a JV deal with us, then you get to join our community, and in that community I do 2 live events a year, which you can come for free if you're part of Flipboard Plus. It's like a little organic mastermind. It's pretty cool. So we like it.
Okay, awesome. Well, I mean, for anybody that wants to learn from you, your YouTube channel is a great resource. Your classes, obviously, like I said, there's no paywall, right? You're really educating people for free and bringing them into the business and your profit is coming from running JV deals and helping them succeed, which I think is incredible. So if anybody wants to get involved with your community, you're a very easy man to find, easy man to learn.
Oh yeah.
So we'll put all of the links in the episode description for anybody that's looking to connect with Zach. If you're looking to work with him and then also work with Launch Control and get that going to help grow and scale your business, we'll have his Launch Control link in the episode description as well. Make sure that you use that so we know that you came in from this conversation and are at least from a YouTube perspective learning from him. It'll help us out a lot getting you guys set up with Launch Control. Zach, anything else that you want to, any advice you want to leave the audience with, last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing is if you're cold calling right now, the best other marketing channel is texting, because the most expensive part of texting is not actually the Launch Control itself, it's the skip tracing. And if you already paid for the cold calling list, the texting is way cheaper. And so that's kind of the point. Like the skip tracing is the most expensive part. And if you already did that for cold calling, go do the texting. But also don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to text, or like I can't become successful. Don't feel like you have to pay to get a wholesaling deal if you don't have the money for it, right? The point is using a tool to make it even better. And so my best advice for anyone is just learn how to wholesale for free. Don't spend any money on marketing until you get a deal. And then after that, start investing in the tools and scale it out like crazy.